Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is In Search of Insectivores, Protecting the Giant Anteater. And it will be presented by our fabulous Nat Hab expedition leader and wildlife biologist, Marcus Brandau, and wildlife biologist, Ana Meiga. Thank you both so much for being here today. I cannot wait to learn more about the giant anteater. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay, thank you so much, Sunny. Thank you for hosting this webinar with us today. I'm particularly happy with today's webinar for several reasons. First, because we're going to talk about one of the stars of the Pantanal fauna, which is the giant anteater. So it's one of my favorite animals in the whole world, an incredible animal, one of the most iconic mammals here in South America. So anyone who comes with Nat Hab tours in Pantanal will likely be able to see the giant anteater. It's a relative common animal here, but this animal is still faces some problems here in South America. So especially in other regions other than Pantanal. So we still need to learn about their habits. And that's why I invited Ana Meiga to talk with us today. And I'm very happy that Ana is here today. She's a longtime friend of mine, and she's a researcher. She's now developing her PhD focusing on the movements of the giant anteater. She will talk with you. And so welcome, Ana. Thanks for being here with us. And I would like to talk, and we're going to be open for questions at the end of the presentation. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you all for being here today. It's a great pleasure to give this talk to all of you. So let's get started. So just to give a little bit of background about me before I started, I am a biologist and I did my master's degree in biodiversity conservation, both back in Brazil. And during this time, I was lucky enough to do some trainees and field works in the Pantanal, the Amazon, and the Atlantic forest. And after that, I started to work in the consultant segment. So it's been about 10 years, more than 10 years that I'm working in this path now, and always focusing on the medium and large mammals. And now in August 2022, I started my PhD here at the University of Florida, and I am now working with the giant anteaters. And also, before I actually start to talk about this work, I would like to mention that my PhD project is a partnership with this NGO called ICAS, that in English would mean Wild Animal Conservation Institute, and that we have a huge team behind everything that I will be talking here today. So I just wanted to acknowledge this because this amazing team is helping with everything, and none of I am doing here would be possible without them. Okay, so let's get started. Who are the giant anteaters? The giant anteater is in the Cyanatra superorder that it also includes the armadillos and sloth. And the giant anteater is a large-bodied mammal with its weight varies from 30 to 45 kilograms, and it is the largest anteater species, and it can reach out about 2 meters. That means they can be taller than me, so they are pretty big animals. And they have this unique and fascinating looks that is characterized by their long head, this long neck. They have this little small toothless mouth, and they have these huge bushy tails. And as we can see here in these pictures, it is the same animal. In this picture, it is the animal is sleeping, and normally they use this bushy tail to cover themselves when they are sleeping. And this, they actually act as a blanket, and it can protect from the cold or from the heat, and also it can protect against potential predators. As we can see in this first picture, the animal is very hidden under its tail. And another characteristic of the giant anteaters, as we can see here in this first picture, is that they have this three strong and big claws, and they are actually their scientific name, that is Myrmecophaga tridactyla, means that Myrmecophaga comes from eat ants, and tridactyla because of these three claws. And we can see in these other pictures, they use these strong claws to dig in these termite mounts, and it is very strong and thick. So we can see that they also have these very strong characteristics of their claws. And they can also, sometimes they will use it to dig in the ground, not only in these termite mounds, and they sometimes can also dig some trees. And normally, as you can imagine by their name and by the pictures, the giant anteater eats mostly ants and termites. Sometimes they will include also beetle larvae and honeybees that maintain their colonies inside these termite mounds. But the main food intake is ants and termites. And here, as we can see, another very characteristic of the giant anteater is that this species has no teeth. However, it has this very long tongue, although it's a very small mouth, but their tongue can actually reach 1 meter long, so it's very, very long. And one characteristic is that it has saliva that is very viscous and sticky. So it's essential because when they use it to feed from the ants and termites, they will stick in the tongue, and the animal will just swallow about 30,000 insects per day. So it is a lot, and they use the tongue a lot. And as we can
Anna,
see in, yes,
I was just thinking here. I was just seeing the photos here, and I think the giant anteater is so charismatic. But how can an animal be so charismatic if he doesn't even have expression on his face? You know, he's so specialized. But I think I don't know, he's always happy. I was
that's
just
true.
thinking about that. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
one of the
it's,
most charismatic animals I've ever seen.
yes, for me, it is also one of the most incredible animals. They are so different looking, and we can see this is just a baby, and it has the same similar characteristics using the tongue. They
Yeah,
also use this tongue to kind of stretch. You know, when you wake up and then you normally stretch, or the cats do that stretching in the morning, they use the
sure.
tongue to do this. So that's why we can see in many of these pictures, a lot of the animals are doing like this. So normally when they wake up, the first thing they will do is to put all the tongue outside their mouth. And
Wow,
you're
great.
you're you're right. It's always looks like they are smiling. They have this cute
Yeah,
little smile.
yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's super, super cute. And it's so characteristic as the babies have similar characteristics as the adults. And talking about babies, this is so impressive as well. We can see in these two pictures. The first one, we have a mom carrying the baby, a very little cute baby. And in the second picture, we have a not so little baby anymore, but it's still carrying in their back. So this is other characteristic of the giant anteaters. They normally have only one pup, and the mom will carry the pup in their back for about 6 months. And the pregnancy, it will also take about 6 months. So it's a very long pregnancy, and then a very long parental care that they have that is very characteristic of the species as well. And then the pup will start to explore the area. It will goes down the mom's back and explore the area. They will start to feed as well. And when they reach about 8 to 9 months, they will become independent.
Great. Let me just ask you. I was wondering. You know how much a giant anteater lives?
Oh, that's a good question. So in normally it changes when it's in natural habitat than in zoos. But I think they can reach out about 30 years, if I am not mistaken. I should double check this information. But I know in the
Okay,
zoos they will live more than in natural areas.
sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Um, and here, in terms of their natural habitats, we can see the giant anteater, they are terrestrial mammals, and they can be found in a very diverse native habitats. So they can be found, for example, in grasslands, in savannas, humid and dry forests. And actually, initially, it was thought that the giant anteaters would occur only in areas, or that they would prefer these open areas. But there are now some recent studying that shows that actually they also use forested areas a lot. Probably the thing is that it's just easier to find these animals when we are looking in open areas, as the Pantanal, for example. It's much easier to find them than in the Amazon forest, for example. But they do occur in both areas. And although these species prefer to be in these natural areas, uh, nowadays, as Marcus mentioned, we know that there is a lot of transformation in the landscapes. So their presence is also being seen near agricultural landscapes, for example, pastures or tree plantations, for example, eucalyptus or sugar canes. So there's been documents of these species living in these areas as well, that it shows that the species has a little bit of plasticity in terms of being able to occupy these different areas. And talking about their global distribution, so here I have a world map, so just we know where exactly we are talking about in the South America. The giant anteater, they are then endemic to the Neotropic region. And here in this map, in the right side, we can see the yellow colors is where the giant anteater exists right now, and the red colors represent where they are probably extinct. So we can see that they occur in the Central America and most parts of the South America as well, excluding the more southern areas. And as
Anna,
we can see, yes,
let me ask you, sorry for interrupting. I
no,
was just
no, go
wondering,
ahead.
we have the other anteater, so we got, I don't know if everybody knows it. We have the silky anteater, which is that one little small anteater, amazing animal. You
Super
can fit
cute.
in your hand, really cute. So there were some new species of silky anteater. Some researchers were focusing on that, and we can now see several species of silky anteater. Do you know if the giant anteater is being investigated as related to that? You know, is there genetic investigations? We can expect probably new species in the future of giant anteater. You know something about that?
That's a good question. I would say that I would not be surprised if we discover if we heard about a new discovery of giant anteaters, because as you were saying, like the silk anteater, the silk is smaller species, but we have until nowadays some large mammals that are still being discovered. For example, we also had recent discovered about a new tapir species, and although we would imagine that these larger mammals, they're already known and it's easy to find them and to study them, but actually it's not, right? We can see that there's still a lot to know about these species. And I don't know exactly about a genetic study about trying to discover new species, but there is actually a recent paper that was published about the morphology of the giant anteater skulls. Because we have one species that is the giant anteater, but there are three subspecies. And they mainly occur, so there is some subspecies that occur in the central area, and another one near Colombia and Venezuela, and there's the other that is the one that we have here in Brazil and the South America. And this paper was just mentioning that there is one of the schools that is actually smaller than the others. So there's not genetics information about this yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they come with a new giant anteater species. That's a great question.
Wow, that's so amazing to know. Hey, amazing to know that. I'm hoping someone do that kind of research because giant anteaters are facing a real severe uh, threat. So yeah, let's see about that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
And talking about the local distribution, then focusing in the Brazil area, we can see here a map of the biomes in Brazil. And in the right side, there is a map on the occurrence of the giant anteater in red. And then we can see that although initially, historically, the giant anteater used to occur in all the biomes in Brazil, but we can see that the species is declining now. For example, we don't see the species anymore in the Pampa biomes, in the southern areas of Brazil. It is becoming much more restricted in the Atlantic forest and also in the Caatinga. And although for the Pantanal and the Amazon area, they are considered relatively stable. In the Cerrado, we also know that they are decreasing, the population are decreasing as well. And talking about this population experiencing these regional declinings and probably local extinction, it is important to mention what are the main threats for the giant anteaters, right? And to start, the giant anteater is a vulnerable species under the IUCN Red List classification of threatened species. And one of the main threats that the species is facing we can see here in this picture is the fragmentation of the landscape. It's the habitat loss and fragmentation. We can see here, for example, how different it is, right? The both sides. So the species are losing their habitats. They are losing the areas that they can live. So this is one of the biggest problem for the species. And another huge problem is about the roadkills, because these species they don't see very well, so they have these small eyes and they don't see very well. Although they can smell very well, but they don't see very well. And they have like very slow movements, and at night they are active a lot during the night. So imagine an animal that is already dark, has dark colors, crossing a road at night with slow movements. It is very hard for the drivers to stop or to see the animal. So this is one of the huge problems and issues that we have for the giant anteaters. And another threat for the species are the wildfires. We have this huge fire in the Pantanal in 2020 that was completely out of control. And because they have this thick fur, they are very flammable for the fire. So it's a huge problem for the species as well. Another very common conflict is the conflict with the dogs, because as I mentioned that we are like fragmenting the areas, and then these species are living more close to humans, right? Because we are getting closer to their natural habitats. And then there is this tendency to have these interactions between dogs and the wildlife. And this is also a threat for these animals. And another interesting and it's very curious and interesting thing that happens is this giant anteater. They are considered as bad omen superstitions. This is a very recent paper published last year that was conducted in the Pantanal. And they have in the Pantanal, there is this belief that the giant anteater can bring bad luck. And the researcher tried to understand why there is this bad luck related to the giant anteaters. And what they could discover is because of these different and unique looking that they have, it can also bring psychological discomfort. Because when you look at the animal for a long distance, sometimes you don't know where is the head, where is the tail, you don't know if it's going or if it's coming. So it can start to have a lot of superstitions about the species. And also the social influence is very related. For example, if you are born in an area that believes that this animal can bring bad luck, it is very likely that you will also believe in that. And having these misconceptions and misinterpretation about the species, about their behavior, and also because they are relatively frequently species to be seen in the Pantanal, there is this bad woman superstition about the species. And understanding and learning about this is so important, because then we can start to talk about the species, right? When we have education programs, we will be able to demystify some of these informations about the species, and hopefully remove this bad luck thought about the giant anteater. Okay, so before I start, I also would like to talk a little bit about the ICAS, that is this NGO. It is an amazing NGO that I encourage you all to check their website, because they have a lot of very interesting projects. I heard that Arnaud Debier, he also came here to Nat Hab to talk about the giant armadillo, but I won't have time to talk about all the projects that they are doing. So if you have the time, please check them in the website. And this organization, the Wild Animal Conservation Institute, is a non-profit organization, and they created this organization to support conservation projects for the biodiversity in Brazil. And the main goal of this organization is to generate science knowledge, to engage and influence and seek for solutions and strategies to promote a better coexistence between humans and wildlife. So yeah, they have a lot of nice projects, and I will talk a little bit about one that will combine with my PhD project. So the main goal of the ICAS organization is to work for the conservation of these two iconic species, that is the giant armadillo and also the giant anteater. And one of the projects that they have is these Anteaters and Highway projects. So they started this project in 2017 and 2020, and they wanted to understand why, when, and how the giant anteaters cross the roads. And what spurred this interest about this project is because they were doing monitoring about animal vehicle collision. So here we have Brazil and Mato Grosso do Sul state. So this road here to the left will go to the Pantanal, and these are the other three roads that is in the Cerrado area. And they started to do a monitoring in this road, and they started to notice how many giant anteaters could be seen as roadkills in these roads. So they started to plan, because they were very surprised about how many species were lost by these roadkills. And the Pantanal, so one of the projects started in the Pantanal, as I imagine you know, or if you don't have the chance to go, I hope you can visit the Pantanal someday. because the Pantanal is incredible. I imagine who had the chance to visit has the same impression as me. I think it's one of the most beautiful places that we can see in Brazil. And if you like to see wildlife and if you like mammals like me, this is the paradise. You can see very easily a lot of different mammals. It was the place that I could see the most diverse mammals in my entire life.
Yeah,
And
Anna. So thank you for bringing these words. I also agree with you. It's for me. I've traveled a lot of places to Amazon and some other places, and Pantanal still continues to be my favorite area in the world. You can see wildlife everywhere. You can see the giant anteater easily. I've been to Amazon, I don't know, like 5 years in a row, but I haven't ever seen a giant anteater there because it's much easier to see in Pantanal than in other areas. And bird life there is amazing, and it's nice to know that you are working with the giant anteater because it's a very characteristic animal that we can see there in Pantanal. So yeah, go ahead. I just would like to say that it's also my favorite place. So come with natural habitats to see Pantanal.
exactly, yeah, it's just an amazing place. It's the world's largest tropical wetland, and as you said, it's very impressive, and you can see a lot of wildlife. It's amazing. And as you can see here in this picture, we have this highway that is a very long, and it's just in the middle of the Pantanal. So you can imagine if we have a very diverse and rich area, and there is a road in the middle. They started to see a lot of animals roadkill in this road. And the Cerrado, the Brazilian Cerrado or the Brazilian savanna, in contrast, it is less popular than the Pantanal. Although it is, we can see here in this map, here we have the Pantanal in green and yellow is the Cerrado biome. It is the second largest biome in Brazil, behind only for the Amazon, and it has we say that some of the characteristics of the Cerrado is that it has this typical sparse scrubby vegetation and these thick trees, and sometimes it can sound a little bit monotony, but it's not. It's also a very impressive and diverse area in Brazil that has beautiful landscapes, and there's these iconic species as well as Marcos was saying. The giant anteater is iconic in the Pantanal, but it's also iconic for the Cerrado, and so there is a lot of great economic and tourist potential for the Cerrado as well. And the
Anna,
Cerrado, yeah.
sorry to ask you. Do you know how much anteaters are there in Pantanal as compared to Cerrado? So the Cerrado population is maybe facing a little more trouble.
Yes, that's a great question, Marcus. Because if we think, we would imagine, because the Cerrado is much bigger than the Pantanal, we would imagine that we have a population, a much higher population in the Cerrado, right? But actually, there is a paper that was published, a very interesting paper that was analyzing the population in different biomes in Brazil. So in the Pantanal, in the Cerrado, the Atlantic Forest, and the Amazon. And they actually saw that the population is more genetically diverse in the Pantanal. And in contrast, for the Cerrado, it's where there's less diversity. So this is it is of a great concern because there is this huge area, but however, the Cerrado, half percent of the Cerrado has been converted in other land uses. For example, agriculture, like converting areas from agriculture to from forest to agriculture. So the diversity of the genetic in the population is declining in the Cerrado. It's a very concern for the species in the Cerrado. And although, even though that 0.5% of the Cerrado has been converted, it is considered a biodiverse hotspot. The Cerrado hosts 5% of the Earth's species. But as I was mentioning, unfortunately, 50%, 0.5% of the Cerrado has been converted. And when I'm talking about land use and land cover change, this process is the process of converting natural areas, for example, forest or savanna, to other land uses. For example, pastures or tree plantations or agriculture plantations. And because the Cerrado, there is this grasslands, savanna, it's a very diverse, but it's not so easy to see. For example, when we think about forests, the Amazon forest, for example, and we can see more easily that these areas are being deforested because you have a forest and suddenly you do not have anymore. So it's easier to see what's happening. But in the Cerrado, because we have some natural open areas, it is more difficult to visualize in the satellite that this biome is being transformed. And another great activity that is happening in the Cerrado right now is the soybean plantation. Historically, we had more pasture for cattle ranching in the Cerrado, but more recently, the soybean plantation has have been one of the major driver of these land transformations. And this is also a great concern because when we have these annual crops, we can see in this image, in these images, it is a very there is a homogenization of the land, like it's all the same. And we can see in this picture there is a giant anteater. This picture is actually in our study site, and we can see that they are living very close to the soybean. So here is a soybean plantation, and in this side is the soil is being prepared to start to plant soybean plantations as well. And here as well, we can see like this very fragmented areas. So we have soybean plantation, pastures, eucalyptus, and it's a lot of transformation for one place. And just to show a little bit more about these land uses, we can see here there are a pasture with some isolated trees. We can see how different it is when we have a native forest, when we have a tree plantation. In this case, it's eucalyptus. And here again, like pasture, soybean plantation. And when they are planting the soybean, they need to remove all the trees. So it's very, when you see it in person, it calls a lot of attention because they remove all of the trees and then they prepare the soil, and then there's the soy plantation over here. Okay, and then one of the projects, so they started to verify these roads that had a lot of road kills. Then the ICAS and their team started to be interested about the movement of these animals, to understand where they are going, why they're crossing, are they crossing roads? So there is this big project in the Cerrado area. Here is Mato Grosso do Sul state again. So this area would go to the Pantanal, and we are here in the Cerrado area. And here, this is a very interesting device. So to research about their movements, the research add this GPS harness that was developed specifically for the giant anteaters, because normally when you think about GPS in wildlife, we know there are some collars that they add in the neck, but because the giant anteater has this long body, they had to develop this harness for the species, specifically for them. And then in this device, there is a GPS that basically it's the same idea of a GPS in our cell phone. It will track all the movement of these animals, all the locations where they go. We can access this information.
And I'm very curious about hearing how we are finding the giant anteater. Because when you were showing the soybean plantations there, I was just remembering some times that I went to Cerrado, and I saw in soybean plantation several times I saw the man-at wolf, which is the canid that the dog that you showed in previous slides. It's an amazing animal, really beautiful. You can see them in Pantanal. I've seen them in Pantanal as well, and I was amazed to see several times the man-at wolf in soybean plantation. It's not good news, but and I'm interested now in hearing and how you have been finding the giant anteater in these places. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is actually one of the questions that we are interested in during my PhD research. So we have these giant anteaters in this area that there was no soybean plantation before, and they started to implement the soy. So we have the data from before and after the soy plantation. And for a start, just like looking in the field and looking how they are, where we are finding these animals right now, it seems that the giant anteaters, they are avoiding these soybean plantations. It seems that they are changing their areas where they live too far away from the soil. But this is part one of my chapters in my PhD. So we are actually going deeper in these questions because we really wanted to understand what is the impact of this soybean in for these species, because we have so many areas that is being transformed in soy right now. So we hope to have more concrete analysis very soon. But just by looking, what it seems to be happening is that they are avoiding, because it seems that the soil is a barrier for the species for their movement. But we will have more to say when we finish this analysis. But it's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
And talking about movement, why movement ecology? Why is it important? So basically, all of the animals will need to move to survive at some point, and they can move to find water. They can move to find places to rest. They need to move to find food. They also need to move to avoid competition or to avoid predation. They will also need to move to find partners to mate, and also to raise their children, their young, and to disperse to new habitats, for example. So the movement, understanding the movement of the species, we can understand a lot of the behavior of the species. So it can help us a lot to understand what's happening with that species. And what makes the animals move other than searching for these areas? So normally it is related to the intrinsic factors, like what is inside the animal. For example, their sex, their body mass, their age. All of these can influence when and how this animal will move. And also environmental factors. For example, forest cover or not having a forest cover in heat days, for example, can make this animal move. And these movement patterns will determine the area, the home range, we call home range. That is basically everything that an animal do during their lives. For example, the home range is where the animal forages, where the animal rests, reproduce. So these movement patterns will determine their home ranges. And there are a lot of other interesting things that we can find with the movement of these animals. For example, we can get data from the speed of the animal, so how fast this animal is moving or how slow this animal is moving, and also how tortuous this movement is. And with this information, we can infer about their behaviors. For example, if the animal is walking fast in one direction, or if the animal is resting, or if the animal is foraging. So there are a lot of cool information that we can get from this movement data. That is super, super cool. I am suspicious to talk about it, but it's really, really interesting.
Oh, I'm excited to hear. I want to hear everything new from the giant Anteaters. Go ahead.
Yes, it's super, super interesting. And another thing that we can get from this data, we can understand the areas that this animal is selecting. For example, what habitats these animals prefer to live. Do they prefer forests? Do they prefer savannas? If we have an area that was transformed, for example, it's now a soybean plantation. What areas is this animal preferring? Does it go to the soil, or does it prefer the forest? Does it prefer the savanna? So all of this information we can get from this movement data. It is super, super interesting. And all of this information is essential for us to understand what places are more important for the species, what places we need to preserve, for example. So they are very important for the conservation of the species. And why study giant anteaters? I know there are these incredible animals. We can see, we can look, they have this unique look. They are also vulnerable under the IUCN Red List, right? So that would be already enough reasons to study it. But there are more. Besides all of these, they also, we believe that these animals, they can be an important model for other species to understand how these landscape changes are or can also influence other species. Because the giant anteater, they show a very strong response to this environmental variation, because these species, they are large mammals and they eat just the ants and termites, so they don't have a lot of calorie intake, right? So they have difficult to thermoregulate. And then these changes in the environment can have a strong effect in these giant anteaters. So we believe that they understanding how this species is changing their behaviors in these areas, we can also help us to understand other animals' behaviors for other species as well. So this is a very, very important species to understand more. And then I won't go too deep in the information, but just after giving all of these introduction, part of what we are trying to understand in this project is how landscape characteristics can influence this animal behavior, their movement and their behavior. And for example, here, this is our stud site, and we have areas with eucalyptus, plantation, pasture, and soybean, and species living just in here in all of these areas. And we wanted to understand what the species do in a place that is very degraded already, right? And we would expect that this animal will move more in these anthropogenic areas, because these areas, they don't have a lot of resources for the species in terms of food or shelter, for example, and also because the species probably will need to search more for partners to mate. So they will be moving more and faster in these anthropogenic areas, and we expect that they will use these native areas to rest more instead of transiting. And this is part of what we are doing right now, part of the project. And also then we have this specific topic for the soybean area, and all of this information, they are key information for the conservation of the species, because understanding these preferences of habitats that the species can have, we can find target areas for conservation. We can identify areas that needs to put more effort for conservation. And we hope to use these findings and combine with decision makers, policy makers. We also want to integrate our project with different interdisciplinary group, for example, social area, public policy, communication, so we can help develop strategic and effective conservation plans for the species and also for the Cerrado biome. Because when we are preserving one species, the environment and also other species that live in the same area will take advantage of this. They will also have a better place. So this is what we expect from our results. And to show some more examples of some nice projects that are already being developed, and talking about this integration about biologists, sociologists, and how to increase this coexistence about human and wildlife. There are some activities being developed by ICAS, that is to focus on the education, for example, promoting workshops or talks at schools, museums. And remember that I mentioned about the superstitions. So these superstitions, they can happen a lot when we don't know a lot about the species. So bringing more information about the species, talking about their characteristics that can see weird or different characteristics, but as we start to talk, they will be normal, right? So this is a very, very important project that are being developed in the Campo Grande area, and also in the areas that we have these projects, schools near the state sites. And another project that is very, very interesting that is being developed, it's called these Highway Heroes. So they also being developed by ICAS. They had this research that they interviewed a lot of truck drivers to understand if the road kills were on purpose or not. And the results showed that they are not road killing the animals on purpose, but it's just difficult to stop before hitting the animal. So ICAS is developing this app to combine the truck drivers. Then they can receive information from a lot of the highways in Brazil, and they can know where is the areas where there are more chances of having wildlife vehicle collisions. Uh, and then we can also they can also add the information when they see a large mammal, for example, the giant anteater or a tapir or the capybara. And then we can have all of this information and starting to prioritize areas in the highways as areas that need effort. For example, they have these protections in the roads, for example, crossing roads, and also these fences to avoid the wildlife to cross on the road and use the crossings. So there are a lot of good information that we can identify combining these human and wildlife coexistence. So it's a very, very important and very nice things that are happening. And to conclude, I wanted to share this is also a very recent news that was released, recently published. there is this rewilding of the giant anteaters in Argentina. So they started to do a reintroduction of the species of the giant anteater in Argentina. And recently we saw a new record of the giant anteater in the south area of Brazil, in the Rio Grande do Sul state, in Porto Alegre, that there was the species was considered extinct there. It was one of the local extinction that was considered for the species, and now they found this record in the camera traps. So after more than 100 years, that the species was not seen in this area, and now they saw this record. So I wanted to conclude and to finish my talk talking about these conservation projects that are working, because although we have all of these issues happening with the species, there are also a lot of conservation projects, and we can see that they are working and they are important. So I would like to finish with this positive message and hope, because it's also very rewarding to see these conservation projects working for the species. It's an amazing positive result. And before I finish, I just would like to thank again all the collaborators of this project, or all the funders. I would like to thank you, Natural Habitat Adventure, for inviting me for this talk today. Thank you, Marcus, and mainly thank you all for taking this time to listen to this talk today. And I am happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana and Marcus. That was very interesting. I learned a lot about anteaters. We've got some great questions already, so let's go ahead and dive in. Are there any plans to create overpasses or underpasses for the anteaters so that they don't end up as roadkill?
Yes, that's a great question. A great question. So, in these projects, in all of that roads that I was showing in that maps, in the Cerrado and Pantanal, they continue to do these projects, and they actually have already some of underpassages for giant anteaters and other terrestrial mammals, and they are monitoring this underpassage. So there are some areas that we already have these passages for these animals, and there is this project that they are evaluating and verifying if it is working, if the animals are crossing. And frequently we actually see some nice pictures of the animals, so they add camera traps in both sides of these crossings roads, and they can see and confirm that the animal is entering from one side and leaving from the other side. So it's really, really nice.
Oh, excellent. I know some jaguars prey on giant anteaters. Are there other predators out there, and how do anteaters protect themselves or defend themselves?
Yeah, great question. For example, in the Cerrado, we don't have, in our study site, we don't have the jaguar anymore, but we do have the panther. That is also felid. It's smaller than the jaguar, but it's considered one predator as well for the giant anteater. And because it's a large mammal, there are not a lot, right? There is this
The puma.
bigger, the puma. Yes, sorry, puma, mountain lion, puma, exactly. And yeah, and but yeah, the natural predators would be the puma in smaller areas. And I would say like this conflict with wild dogs, and also unfortunately these roadkills are more it's worse than these predations. We can
Mm.
see more not natural predators, but other predators happening in our areas.
And have they developed any strategies to defend themselves against natural predators?
Yes, one of the
I'm not a
strategies.
specialist in giant eater.
Go
I was
ahead, Marcus,
gonna,
please. Go ahead, please.
sorry, my connection here. Oh, okay. I was gonna add that the anteater has this big claws, so they can defend themselves. Probably not easy from jaguar, but probably from pumas. So I think a puma may take a giant anteater, but it's not as common as a jaguar would
Hmm.
to. But yeah, the giant anteater is like uh, a really charismatic animal, but he has the ways to defend himself.
Hmm.
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Are anteaters and tapirs related in any way?
No, they are not related actually. Yeah, so the giant anteater would be more related to the sloth and armadillos than the tapirs. They
Hmm.
are both big. They are both one of the largest mammals that we have in South America, but they are actually not related. We would say that the tapirs are more related to horses than other animals.
Interesting. Is any of the Cerrado protected? And if not, is any work being done to get it protected?
Great question. Yeah, we do have areas, protected areas. There are also national parks in the Cerrado. There is one. There are more projects that are also trying to preserve. So there's in Mato Grosso do Sul state, there is an area that is Parque do Pombo. So there are some actions to improve the protection of the Cerrado. Yeah, that's a great question.
Hmm. And how has the upsurge of dengue fever affected the Pantanal?
I'm sorry, I didn't get this one.
Has Are you aware if the upsurge in dengue fever has affected the Pantanal in any way?
I
Marcus, that might be one for you.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Looks like he's having trouble hearing. So let me just move
Sure.
on to one more. I think we have time for one more.
Sorry, I'm so
No
sorry. We can
worries.
try.
Are the
Uh,
soy farms owned
my
by
connection here
Brazilian?
is not so good right now.
Oh,
It's
no
raining,
worries.
but
Oops. All right, we'll go ahead on. We'll do one more. Are the soy farms owned by Brazilians or by foreign powers, foreign owners?
Great question. So there's a lot of the soy farms that are owned by people from Brazil. Normally, not from people, local people. Sometimes they come from other states, but there are a lot of these production that are exported to other countries. So that's a great question.
Mhm. Well, that is the last question we have time for today. So I will hand it back to you for closing comments.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I hope so. My connection here is slow down now. But I just want to thank Anna. Sorry for not answering all the questions. My internet was not good here at this final minutes, but it was amazing to learn from Anna, and I want to congratulate her for this effort in working with such an iconic and important animal here in South America, and especially in Pantanal. And I would like to ask everyone to come and meet Pantanal and this amazing animal that is the giant anteater and the jaguars and the maned wolf, the tapirs, and the zillion birds that occurs here. So thank you so much for being here, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for organizing all of these talks. And thank you all for listening today. I appreciate it.
I also want to thank you both for presenting today. And I want to thank everybody who tuned in and for submitting such interesting questions. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.